In this tutorial, we will discuss how to set and edit accommodations for students in testing. We will open up the Testing Manager process. Accommodations can be set for students in a couple of different ways. Committees for special ed, language proficiency, and 504 can set accommodations. The testing coordinator can also set accommodations and has the ability to overrule accommodations set by the committees. There are two ways that accommodations can be set in Testing Manager. The first way is to set an accommodation for a group of students simultaneously. For example, let's say we're from the Special Ed Committee and we want to give a large number of the Special Ed students extra time to complete their tests. We click on the link to view and assign tests for the Special Ed Committee. In this view, the Special Ed Committee can make changes only to those students who are designated as Special Ed. In the Special Ed Committee view, only students who are designated as Special Ed will appear in the students list. For example, 96 students are displayed in this view and they are all designated Special Ed. Accommodations can be assigned to students taking a particular test. You cannot assign accommodations to a student without specifying the test that the accommodation applies to. But say we are going to assign accommodations for special ed students for the English 2 reading test. First, English 2 is for 10th graders, so we will select the 10th graders from the student list. We are going to assign all of these 10th graders to take the English 2 reading test. So we can click on Check All and it checks all of the special ed students in our list. We select English 2 reading from the drop-down under Add Students to Master Test Roster and click Add. Now all of these special ed students are taking the English 2 test. For some of them, we want to add an extra time accommodation. So we adjust the check marks next to the students so that only the students who should get the extra time accommodation are now selected. Next, we select the extra time accommodation from the Add Accommodations for Students drop-down list and click Add. The extra time accommodation has been added for all of these checked students in the list for the English 2 reading test. This page is useful if you want to give a large number of students an accommodation all at the same time. If, on the other hand, you want to personalize accommodations student by student, we have a different page that makes that convenient. So now let's check all of the 10th grade special ed students who are all on the master roster for the English 2 reading test. And now we will click Select Accommodations to individually customize accommodations for each one of them. Now all of the students whose names were checked on the previous page are now in the list on the left-hand side of this page, Assign Testing Accommodations. We can now go from student to student customizing his or her accommodations. For example, here's Vernon Abbott, Harlan Alvarez, Maria Bailey, Jenny Bell, and so on. We can go down the list and assign accommodations for each one of these students. For example, let's select Vernon Abbott and then select the test in Algebra 1 and click the Find Accommodations for this test button. If a student has been assigned accommodations for a test, they will show on this page. A small box next to the accommodation will indicate whether that accommodation was recommended by the Special Ed Committee, the Language Proficiency Committee, or the 504 Committee. If an accommodation was recommended by a committee, but the accommodation is not set to be assigned for the test, the accommodation is red flagged. In other words, the accommodation has a bright red background. The testing coordinator has the power to override committee accommodations for a test, but if he does, it is red flagged. Now let's go back to the English 2 reading test. We select English 2 reading from the drop-down. And we click on Find Accommodations for this test. Now we check off the accommodations that we want for the student for this test. So let's give him small group and spelling assistance accommodations. Then click Save at the bottom of the page. The accommodations have been set, and the small box next to them indicates that they were set by the Special Ed Committee. That's how an accommodation can be assigned to each of a group of students in one step, and how individual accommodations can be assigned student by student. Now there's one more thing I want to show you on this page. We can copy the accommodations for a student from one test over to another test. For example, select Jenny Bell. Now select the Algebra 1 test and click Find Accommodations for this test. This page now shows the accommodations that Jenny Bell has for the Algebra 1 test. Notice that it says here, Testing Accommodations from Algebra 1. If we want to copy those accommodations for her over to the biology test, which she will also be taking, we can do that quite easily. We are currently looking at the accommodations for the Algebra 1 test. Now we change the test in the drop-down to biology, but we don't click on the Find Accommodations for this test. We're still looking at the accommodations for the Algebra 1 test, and when we would like for those accommodations to be saved as accommodations for the biology test, we'll click on Save Accommodations to Biology. That makes it easy to save one student's accommodations from one test to another. Finally, we have an industrial strength accommodations copying page. Go to the Testing Manager admin page. Here on the Testing Manager admin page, we click on Testing Manager Process, and under Prepare the Testing Plan, we click Copy Test and Student Info to New Tests. This page is especially helpful if you have done a benchmark test, in other words, a practice test, and you want to copy all of those test assignments and all of those accommodations over to the actual tests. This page allows you to select the benchmark test and then select the actual tests and copy all of the info over in one step. We'll select the benchmark, and we want to copy all of these students, so we'll check all students. And then we select the tests that we would like to copy those students to. For instance, if we want to copy them to the biology class, we would click Biology and then click Copy and Replace, and all of the information would be copied over in one step.